If you're looking for an alternative to Cataclysm this season, Boulder is the build for you. I was able to clear a pit 115 with no problem, and that was on the first try. Not only is Boulder strong, but it also feels buttery smooth this season, partially to do with the fact that they're allowing us to cast while moving now. Now let me show you how the build works. But as always, if you enjoy my content, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and stop by my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/Screamheart. But with that out of the way, let's get into it. So how does this build work? Basically, the build revolves around Dolmen Stone. This gives us the ability that when we cast Boulder, as long as we have Hurricane up at the same time, the boulders will spin around us. And they'll keep spinning for a duration, which means that if we do something like overpower the boulder, for example, the boulder will get that damage for the entire duration of the spin. And I know what you're thinking, oh my god, of course another snapshot build. Well no, not quite. Yes, technically it's snapshotting that damage into the boulder, but you never actually have to think about it in this build. Let me take you into a pit so I can show you what I mean. So the build's actually quite simple. All you have to do is cast your Hurricane, and then you're just going to be casting your boulders. As you can see, there's a boulder spinning around me. But we don't want to stop with one. We want to keep spamming and stack up 10 stacks of the boulder. You can see on the skill icon when you're at 10 stacks. And the goal is to maintain 10 stacks the entire time, because you get a big damage multiplier from your Dolmen Stone based off the number of boulders you have. Now while you're doing this, you want to make sure that you maintain your Hurricane and don't let that run off. It's important to make sure you have enough duration and cooldown reduction to keep it going. Now spirit management is actually really easy in my setup, because even though I'm running out of spirit here, anytime I want to, I can use my ultimate, which will instantly fill my spirit, and I can also use my bulwark, which will instantly fill my spirit. The ultimate has the spirit built in, but the bulwark is filling my spirit because of the pants called Tybalt's Will. These also give you extra damage and extra damage reduction when you use the bulwark, so it's very nice. Now, as you can see, we're actually doing billions of damage, and I'm not even tryharding right now. Now, the trade-off when you're not doing a build like Cataclysm is that we are going to be doing a little bit of shapeshifting in order to min-max the build. So we're using Claw, followed by Boulder, and we're doing that back and forth, and that's keeping up our quick shift bonuses, while also giving us stacks for Hunter Zenith more quickly. Hunter Zenith is going to give us a guaranteed overpower every 30 seconds, but it's also going to reduce that timer each time we cast our ability, and it's going to double that decrease if we swap back and forth. Besides being a source of shapeshifting, Claw is also a way that we can get Spirit in case we feel like we need it. But realistically, if you have the build set up correctly, there's no reason why Petrify and Bulwark is not going to be enough. But hey, an extra source of Spirit's an extra source of Spirit. This also technically can apply Poison, but you should have that covered with other parts of the build, so it's not that big of a deal. In fact, you could probably take that point out of the tree, but it is nice to have that extra assurance. Now, aside from giving you Spirit, your ultimate is actually increasing your critical strike damage by quite a bit. It's also stunning enemies, so it's a nice defensive layer. Speaking of defensive layers, we're reducing enemies' damage with Hurricane and with Debilitating Roar. And Debilitating Roar is also increasing our damage. And while Bulwark is giving us Spirit from our Tybalt's Will, it's also giving us damage reduction, and on the skill itself, it's making us unstoppable and giving us a barrier. But you can see, even with sitting around and explaining this stuff for far too long, including all of the bad recordings that I don't include in the video, you can see that we're way ahead on our time. So this build definitely meets my benchmark for a good build, which is being able to speed farm on 101. But like I said at the start, I cleared a 115, and that wasn't even that hard. Alright, so for a frame of reference, this is what my stats currently look like while standing in town. This is also with all of my incense and elixir active, which you should always keep active as well. We're hitting our maximum resistances, as well as about 1500 critical strike damage and 6600 overpower damage. For the gear, we're going with Vasili's Prayer. This is what's making our boulder into a werebear ability, and this unlocks a lot of different damage from a lot of different sources, not to mention damage reduction. We're going with the Shroud of False Death, but if you don't have this, it's perfectly fine to go with Insatiable Fury. On the gloves, we're going with Metamorphic Stone, which is what makes our boulder into a core skill, allowing us to spam it. We got Tybalt's Will on the pants, but you could definitely manage without these. So if you wanted to run legendary pants instead, you could just use Exploiter's Aspect instead. For the boots, we're going with Stormshifter's Aspect. On the weapon, we're going with Retaliation. Dolmen Stone is required for the amulet. Hunter's Zenith is the best in slot ring, and Ring of Starless Skies is the other best in slot ring. But you could definitely make do without these by running Changeling's Debt or any other applicable damage multiplier. For the Spirit Boons, you're going to want to run with Gift of the Stag. This is going to make sure that we have a little bit of spirit regeneration, as well as a lot of maximum spirit, so that our spirit will fill up even more when we use our ultimate or the Tybalt's Will. We're also going with Iron Feather because maximum life scales our damage and our survivability. Avian Wrath for more critical strike damage. Calamity for more ultimate duration. And Obsidian Slam for more overpowers. By the way, if you want to see the recommended stats and not just the stats I have on my own gear, make sure you click on the written guide underneath the video. It details out all of the information as I recommend it, which is usually better than my own current gear because I haven't taken the time to perfect it. For the skill tree, you want to get at least 2 points into Claw. This last point is optional. You're going to want to max out Wild Impulses because our Boulder is a core skill. You want just 2 points into Bulwark because we don't actually need the extra Fortify. We get a ton of it from our passive down here called Safeguard. You want to max out these passives here and grab Debilitating Roar with the extra damage. Max out Feral Aptitude, grab yourself Hurricane, and I'm actually going for the Vulnerable here. This is one of the only builds where I actually use the Vulnerable here. I know I mentioned that it gave damage reduction earlier, but we're actually going with the Vulnerable because of the fact that it's almost impossible to get that into this build without losing a bunch of damage. But this actually works fairly reliably. We're maxing out our Boulder, and as you can see, I have 26 ranks, and that's not even counting the additional 5 we get from Storm Chasers. We're going for the passive that gives us increased critical strike chance. We're maxing out these passives here, Envenom, and these passives here. This is going to be another source of overpower in the build, so we actually get quite a bit of overpower. We're maxing out our Petrify and getting both additional points. Maxing out all these passives here, this passive here, and this one here. Finally, for our Keystone passive, we're getting Ursine Strength, which is going to really play into that overpower damage. It also increases our survivability, so it's a win-win. For our Paragon boards, we're starting with Earth and Sky on the starter board. Moving up from here, we're going to put on the Survival Instincts board, and our glyph here is going to be Outmatch. And for whatever reason, my Outmatch isn't even active, so hey, more damage. Moving to the left from here, we're putting Ancestral Guidance, and here we're going to be putting the Dominate glyph. Then we're going to move left again, we're going to put the Heightened Malice board on, and we're going with the Spirit glyph here. Finally, moving down from there, we're putting Earth and Devastation, and here we're going with the Fang and Claw glyph. If you want to see the Paragon boards in their fully recommended form, make sure you click on the written guide under the video. For the Mercenaries, I go with Rahir, and on Rahir, you're most likely going to want the Resistances, but depending on your personal setup, feel free to go with Armor if you need that instead. If you go with the Armor side, you're going to go down here to the left and increase your damage when he taunts enemies. Otherwise, stick with what I have here. And for the reinforcement, I'm going with Aldkin for the 20% damage reduction. For my elixirs, I decided to go with Elixir of Fortitude, Redamine Buzz, Soothing Spices, and Blessed Guide. For the witch powers, we're going with the Cycle, which is mostly being used as a growth and decay in order to make sure we get our bonus from our gem. We're going with Force of Will, which is going to increase our damage quite a bit for our overpowers. Soul Harvest, which increases our main stat quite a bit, as long as we group up a big pile of enemies before using our first cooldown. Aura of Specialization, which is increasing our damage by 35%. And yes, this is actually multiplicative, not additive. It's also increasing our aura size, which is nice because it also applies to our Aura of Siphoning. Aura of Siphoning is applying poison and healing us. And in case you didn't know, this plus the Cycle are our 2 sources of poison, aside from our Claw. And then we're going with Hex of Shattering because this is the only reliable hex in order to get the extra effect from our gem. And it reduces enemy damage, so win-win. For our witch power gems, we're going with Elder Sigil. This is going to give us 25% more damage. We're going with Friend of the Bog for the 8% main stat and 10% maximum life. It also gives us Unhindered, which is a nice bonus. And then you optionally can either go with Hungering Void, which is what I'm using, or you can use Phantom String, which gives us 15% more damage. But I kind of got spoiled with the Hungering Void while using Cataclysm, so I think I'm going to stick to it. For our runes, we're going with Igni Cox, and this is just going to double our damage occasionally. But keep in mind it's taking away your spirit, so be ready to use your ultimate or your bulwark whenever this happens. Although realistically, I don't even notice it happening most of the time. And for our other runes, we're going with Bok Zal. And this is just going to increase our maximum life, which increases our survivability and our damage. And that's about it. This build ended up being a lot more solid than I thought it would be, so it's definitely a good alternative if you're not feeling Cataclysm. But if you guys have any questions or suggestions on what I should do next, make sure you leave a comment below. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. But on that note, I'll see you guys in my next video. Daddy Druid out.
Subscribe to Screamheart. He's more than an old fart. He makes lots of fun builds. I promise his streams chill. He should probably be faster. Come watch this disaster.